Hello, everyone. This is David Schweizer. I am a theater and opera director of many years standing. And in this interview, I share with you information about my current project, It's Alive, performed and written by John Fleck at the Odyssey Theatre. I think the uniqueness of the theater experience is a combination of very seductive things. The thing about theater, the theater experience, is that it's live, it's in real time. It only exists in that time. So many of the primary art forms are it can be viewed again and again, and you can have the same experience, the listening to recording of a piece of music, or looking at a painting or whatever, obviously, and you can say that theater can be recorded and zoomed, and we're trying to explore all sorts of new alternatives like that, and have been in the past couple of years, when during the pandemic, obviously theater artists are racking their brains and trying anything that they can think of to keep the live thing alive. But it's really only alive in its own moment. So in the richness of that moment, in the full potential of that moment, where everything is working toward the liveness of that moment, the performance of the actors, the stage environment, the unique design, the text, everything about it. And I think, especially in this country, where there's not really any basic cultural or foundational support for the theater, I think in order to have a life working in the theater, you need to have developed a unique obsession with working in that field at some point in your life. And I'm always amazed. I started very early, and I had a lot of really incredible, unique early opportunities to help to seduce me into a theater life. And, by the time the ups and downs came, I was already seduced. So I had no choice. I was in for the long haul. But I'm always amazed, now when I see, young people, and I can peg immediately. I can look at the glint in their eye, and I can see that they've got that same obsession. And no matter how difficult it is, no matter how little support, no matter how, everyone talks about the theater is dead. And now, in the pandemic, there's a whole fresh volley of, the theater is dead. Still, they're going to keep doing it. So I guess it's a confederacy of obsessives. How about that? John Fleck, the irreplaceable performance artist, performer, actor, character actor, creator, has been a creative friend of mine for decades. I came out to Los Angeles when I was about 30 years old, in 1980, I guess. I started to work out here. I had a job at the Taper. I had a very early kind of establishment theater career in New York theaters, and in all around the country, sort of, straight East Coast oriented, classic early theater career, in which I was kind of an outlier. I was sort of the crazy experimental guy working in all the straight, quote unquote, situations. I came out here, I did a new play at the Taper, and I was dazzled by this whole different, unique sense of live theater creativity in the Los Angeles community. Not so much the taper where I was working, which was sort of trying to imitate the East Coast European-derived theater tradition, but all of these artists, all of these performance artists, all of these visual artists, incorporating live performance into their work, and all kinds of original theater pieces were coming out of it, and I was delighted by them and very interested in participating in them. And vice versa, a lot of these people had never even thought to work with a theater director per se, because the whole point of their work was that it was uniquely personal to them. So there was no way that they could really think that someone could come in and help them. But I developed a lot of very unique relationships with people like this. And John Fleck was one of them, and he was one of the earliest and one of the most rewarding. And we immediately started to do pieces, together, again, I would say, quote, unquote, because I think one of the reasons these people gravitated to me is that I had already directed almost every different kind of theater you could do. And so I had ego in it, in that I was passionate about the work, but I didn't have that kind of ego that needed to claim possession and proprietary rights. I was interested in what these performance artists wanted to do and how to express themselves. And I knew that I could shape and dramatize and heighten what they were doing, and that we could come up with a unique thing together. So John and I, gosh, I think the first one was in downtown LA, and then went on tour all around when experimental theater pieces were still invited to small tour stations around the country. It was called Psycho Opera, and it was more or less that. It featured things like John, having sex with himself, part live and part him on a TV screen, and actually, one of the famous pieces of this era, years went by and we did several, was John's piece, Blessed Are All the Little Fishes, which has got him in trouble with the NEA for obscenity. And so he became part of one of the famous NEA 4, who had the lawsuit in the 80s over their rights and over censorship, NEA getting involved with censorship, which really brought John into the national arena for the first time. And I am proud to say that I directed that theater piece, which featured a unique moment. Was John, who we had pumped with water for a long time before the piece, actually taking a very high arcing pee all the way across the stage into a toilet bowl, in which was featured a poor little goldfish, which was totally protected and sealed off, but the audience didn't know that. So it was one of those, kind of moments that you live for when the audience saw this. That kind of thing. I mean, I think you get the feeling. John and I had a very sympathetic relationship. He's also great working with lots of other people. A big theater event for me in the LA area in around 1986 was a piece called Plato Symposium, which was exactly that. It was a dramatization of Plato Symposium, which is a piece about where Plato evokes this contest of all these wise ass Greek playwrights competing for an award for who can write the best speech about love. So they all give these speeches about love, Aristophanes and all these people. And then Socrates waits quietly until the end, and he's been their teacher. And they said, "Oh, Socrates, please, now we have to hear what you have to say." And Socrates goes, "Oh, no, I couldn't possibly, but then is persuaded to give this extraordinary speech, which takes the second half of the play, takes like an hour and a half. Tony Abadamarco was the actor, and is this extraordinary defense of love and creativity, also in a way justification of the highest aesthetics of homosexuality. And John Fleck in this piece played Pausanias, the most like overtly gay of all of the people. He was a knockout. I mean, he had the audience in stitches. Anyway, we started the piece with this group of LA performance artists, including John and I, started the piece to do just one performance for AIDS relief, because it was right in the thick of it and all of our friends were dying. And it ended up to run for years here in the community in different theaters. And it was one of those things, I think none of us who participated in the project will ever forget it, nor ever deny that it was one of those things that demonstrated that what you do in the theater really can have meaning way beyond yourself. And it has a lot to do with the fact that I'm still in the ring. I think John might say the same. So anyway, John has been in my life for many, many years, and I hope also starred in my production of Tobacco Road much more recently, so handful of years ago. The years sort of start to whip by at a certain extent. I mean, you can tell seeing me on Zoom, I'm no longer a youngster, and half the time I kind of forget exactly when something happened. But in the aughts, I did a rare revival of Tobacco Road at the La Jolla Playhouse, and John played this scallywag, this father of 18 children in Depression, Oklahoma or somewhere, who had slept with most of them. I mean, it was crazy. So anyway, this is the first brand new performance piece that we've collaborated on in a while. And it's been back and forth. I've been out here. I'm not as bi-coastal as I was in the days when I was regularly doing one thing after another at LATC and the Taper and with the Actors Gang and so forth. But I still have a place here. I still cherish coming here. There's still something unique to me about the creativity of this environment. And John, of course, makes his home here and works actively in the industry as well as his own performances. So, I come to him now. It's Alive, It's Alive, the new theater piece that John Fleck has invited me to collaborate with him on, is not unique in terms of John Fleck's work, because his work almost always combines comedic performing, almost clown performing, almost commedia type performing, musical aspects, singing songs, direct relationships with the audience, and a provocative theme or title or urgent basis for doing the piece. So in this case, John and I got together thinking about in early pandemic. It's I don't know what it says that we're now talking about early pandemic as these years have slogged by, but We were both here in Los Angeles, and we both had relationships with the Odyssey Theatre. I had recently sort of returned to the Odyssey Theatre to do a musical by Gertrude Stein and Al Carmine's called In Circles, which was part of their tribute to the theater of 50 years ago season that they did like just before the pandemic. And at first I said, "Oh, did you call me because I'm old enough? do I have any other qualifications?" But I had a wonderful time going back there and doing this musical. And John and I became particularly close to Beth Hogan, who runs the place now, along with Ron Saucy. And we talked about how to mount a performance piece, a piece that was actually performed live and not just seen over Zoom or something. And, you know, that could also be, you know, safe for people to come and see. And so we had this idea of doing a piece in the parking lot of the Odyssey. Actually, that theater across town didn't like steal the idea, but had more money to do a real version of the idea. What is it called? I don't mean to be condescending by forgetting their name, but they did the Octoroon, and they have a very beautiful new space in their parking lot. So we didn't discontinue that idea just because of that, but it also started to seem like the pandemic was kind of ebbing enough so that people could, with masks on in a controlled situation, come indoors. So we already had the piece created, and it directly addressed and continues to address the COVID situation. I mean, there's a character in it, a primary character in it, played by John, who is literally a COVID germ. He has a big glass helmet on his head with little spikes coming out of it, and he prances around. He's a somewhat rarefied character. He's extremely sensitive. His feelings are hurt very easily, you know, when people don't want to invite him in. You know, it's that kind of thing. There's another character called Proud Boy, who's a fierce, like, anti-vaxxer, Proud Boy. Enough said. And these kinds of different concepts are thrown around. And the audience, we had a workshop engagement at the Odyssey in the fall. And, you know, some people said, "I don't feel right coming yet. Thank you. Good for you guys for doing this." But, you know, many others came. It was a sellout, though in a tiny theater. And they loved it. They went nuts. I mean, it was a source of release. It was the kind of thing you could sit in a theater, and these tensions and this craziness that you'd been dealing with all these months was being demonstrated, made relentless fun of. You know, no stone was unturned, no one was spared. So we thought, well, first of all, it was really great because, you know, we hadn't done anything in such a long time, and the audience had not. This was literally their first time, like, out of the house in many instances. So then, with lots of postponements and rebookings and calculations about the COVID situation, we're back for a longer engagement. And, you know, we'll see. I mean, I'm looking forward to another, explosive, responsive response. And so is John. It's a different time now. We're all a lot more weary. The new variants have meant that it's much easier to catch the damn thing. I'm astonished that I have not, but then I also sailed through the AIDS plague some 30 years ago. So I guess I might be one of the lucky ones. I don't know. I'm knocking on the wood you don't see in the lower in the frame here. But, you know, we're going for it on all the levels that worked so well before. extreme cognizance of the situation we're all living through, and then balls out satire of that same situation. And that's why John literally calls it "It's alive, it's alive." It's a, obviously a takeoff on a horror movie when they see the monster and go, "Oh, it's alive, it's alive." But it's also, we're alive, the theater piece is alive, etc. When the audience sees "It's alive, it's alive," I dearly hope that they feel a kind of relief from the tension of life nowadays, that they feel almost a kind of illicit escape from the conditions of having to live so carefully and so cautiously day to day, with their masks on, with having to, behave in a certain way in order to stay healthy and keep their families healthy, in the toxic politics of the day coming in and intruding on this situation. So it adds just a whole other level of something to be depressed about. We offer "It's alive, it's alive" as both an escape from that and also a demonstration that it is still possible to make work that's really immediate and that really speaks very directly and very personally to what we're all experiencing together, and that hopefully with the gift of laughter, we can blow off steam together and feel a little bit closer together and a little bit more bonded in our lives, as opposed to so separated and fractured, as we are normally encouraged to feel. The Odyssey Theatre is famously, I believe, the oldest live small theater in Los Angeles, and has become known beyond just the Los Angeles area for doing new work, provocative new work, for, well, at least 50 years. I was invited, I worked at the Odyssey Theatre at various different times during my long time of basing myself in Los Angeles from the early 80s on. And most recently was part of an Odyssey Theatre which celebrated its 50 years of new work by paying tribute to the work of 50 years ago. The Odyssey is really a very genuine, very kind of pure environment, in that it has no other goal but to make the most interesting work it can possibly make on very limited resources, and to invite an audience to share in a very immediate way with that work. So it's, it becomes a home for LA artists at various different times in their careers to come and know that they can really genuinely express themselves. And, the only condition is that it be something that's interesting for an audience to watch. So the Odyssey is actually a kind of inevitable place for a team like John and I to end up, because they're unafraid of presenting unusual and provocative work. They welcome it. And John and I also are able to work without a lot of fancy, technical support. The essence of it is in the direct relationship with the audience. Yeah, it's not an accident that we're based at the Odyssey for this piece. I can't imagine, where else it could be and be realized, in such a sort of hands-off, supportive way. To me, the Odyssey is representative of the kind of nonprofit, truly nonprofit theater facility and organization that is demonstrating for local audiences how expressive different kinds of theater and different kinds of storytelling for the theater can be. This is, I mean, in most, Western countries, the tradition of nonprofit, subsidized, supported experimental arts, especially theater, goes without saying. It's a cultural given. In this country, it never has been. And so it's from the get-go, from the beginning, it was up to, if your purpose wasn't so much making money as contributing to the culture, you had to run around and scare up support. And, I mean, that's not so different from the history of the European countries where, from the Renaissance on, you needed to find your way to the Medicis, so that they would pay for what you were doing. But it's a sort of extreme case in this country because there is, we have something, we have a National Foundation for the Arts. We have various fundraising stratagems, but they're just so minimal. And they make so little difference in the support of the work compared to the work in other, like I say, Western cultures, European cultures like ours. So someplace like the Odyssey is especially important to see that it stays alive, to say that to watch how it keeps its doors open. And, it keeps those doors open because people can contribute and say, I've been to the Odyssey. I thought it was exciting. I see that they deserve to stay open. I see that they're not going to be able to stay open, just by ticket sales. That's woven into a lot of nonprofit theater all over this country, the regional theaters, so forth. And good for the people who contribute and the audiences that subscribe and come and give money. But in a broad view, America's ability to support these arts is, it hasn't been cultivated. We weren't raised with the idea that things like theater are necessities. So, we have to, each theater almost has to find its own way to its audience, which the Odyssey has been doing for 50 years here in LA. Welcome, everyone. I'm David Schweizer. I'm the director of It's Alive, It's the Live, a new theater piece by the extraordinary performance artist John Fleck, with whom I've worked repeatedly over many decades. The piece is a hilarious COVID satire. And if you think that's a contradiction in terms, come and see it. It will be an experience dealing with contemporary life unlike any other that you will have. And there will be a lot of laughter, believe me, about surprising things. It's at the Odyssey Theatre on weekends only. I urge you to come and see it. It's a unique experience that you will not forget. So enjoy it.